Welcome to CRCA's Torch Safety Module 1. This training is designed to keep you and your coworkers safe on roofs and reduce the risk of fire on your roofs. Following good practices means you will be able to leave the job and rest easy knowing no fires will start because you followed safe work practices. Module 1 will teach you about propane systems and safe handling. Rule number 1. Never smoke when filling or connecting propane cylinders. Propane is a naturally occurring gas and is a byproduct of the petroleum industry. Propane is commonly called liquefied petroleum gas, or LPG, as it may contain trace gases like butane. At atmospheric pressure and at temperatures above its boiling point of -42 degrees Celsius or -44 degrees Fahrenheit, propane is a gas or vapor. It is important to note that propane is stored as a liquid but burned as a gas. Naturally occurring propane gas is odorless, colorless, non-toxic, non-poisonous, heavier than air, and flammable. An identifying odor is added in its production, so its presence can be detected quickly. The smell is similar to rotten eggs or boiling cabbage. Propane is stored as a liquid, but can only be burned as a gas. For storage, propane gas is liquefied by compressing it into metal tanks or cylinders designed for this purpose. The compression makes the liquid very cold. 1 volume of LPG, or propane, produces approximately 270 volumes of propane vapor, or gas. For example, 1 liter of liquid propane will become 270 liters of gas. The heat required to convert the liquid into gas vapor is obtained from the air surrounding the cylinder, as long as the ambient temperature is above -42 degrees Celsius or -44 degrees Fahrenheit. Then the liquid can be turned into gas and burned. Because LPG is heavier than air, escaping vapor can collect in unventilated or low-lying places and may create a flammable mixture. These areas must be well vented.
Okay, this is a newer tank. They've been pre-purged. We haven't removed the protective covering yet, but you'll have your filler valve here where the bulk truck fills. You'll have your service valve here. That's where you will connect your connection to use your torch or any kind of gas burning appliance. Relief valve right here. And then you have your gauge to see how much propane's left in the tank. This whole area needs to be covered at all times with a protective dome due to the relief valve, so none of the elements get into the relief valve.
Now, let's consider the various parts of a propane tank. The safety relief valve should always be turned away from any visible flame or workers on the roof in case it needs to vent. Propane is a dangerous good, and its handling, transportation, and storage is governed by federal regulation. The cylinder valve identifies the type of cylinder you are using. The protective collar protects the cylinder valve from damage and is permanently welded to the top of the cylinder. The protective collar contains the information necessary for the safe use of the cylinder. The collar contains the following markings: the serial number and the manufacturer name, test month and the year separated by the inspector's mark, and finally the tear weight. Older cylinders have a bullet cap and require protective screw-on collars to protect the valve. The metal foot ring supports the cylinder in an upright position and is permanently welded to the bottom of the cylinder. This supports the cylinder as the cylinder must always be used in the upright position. Cylinders going to a job must have safety labels, both TDG and WHMIS, identify the product, and direct the user to appropriate safety information. Safety labels must be in place and legible on all workplace cylinders. Each cylinder receives a paint coating to protect them from corrosion. Cylinders are painted a light color to reduce heat absorption and to reduce internal vapor pressure. Dark colors absorb too much heat. Once at the workplace, workers must inspect the cylinders prior to using or refilling a cylinder. The torch mechanic is responsible for the inspection. The inspection should include looking for signs of corrosion, pitting, or dents, especially on the bottom of the cylinder. The torch mechanic must look for dents or gouges, as these will weaken the wall. Ensure the foot ring is not bent, loose, or missing. Check that the protective collar is in place and not damaged. Check the cylinder's manufacture date on the collar and confirm it is still safe to use, as cylinders must be inspected and the valve replaced every 10 years. Look at the overall shape and ensure that there are no bulges or dents or gouges. Finally, check the cylinder valve and hand wheel for damage or obstruction of vent and service connections. Remove damaged cylinders from the work area and tag for repair or replacement. LPG is stored and transported in refillable storage cylinders that are fabricated and marked in accordance to the Department of Transportation, Transportation Canada, or Canadian Transportation Commission regulations. The roofing industry uses two types of cylinders. Typically for hand weld torching equipment, you are going to use vapor withdrawal type cylinders. And for kettles and tankers, you will use liquid withdrawal cylinders. Propane cylinders are identified by the service valves they contain. Kettles and tankers require liquid withdrawal LPG cylinders. Propane cylinders maintained in good condition must be inspected every 10 years. Depending on the type of equipment being used, propane cylinders are manufactured in either vapor or liquid withdrawal types. Regardless of the cylinder type, liquid or vapor, storage cylinders are never completely filled with liquid propane. Refillable cylinders are always filled to 80% of their capacity with liquid propane. The 20% space allowed above the liquid is to contain propane vapor and to allow for the expansion of the liquid propane as temperature increases. Propane expands approximately 1.5% of its volume for each 10 degrees Celsius temperature increase. Most handheld torching equipment is designed to operate from vapor withdrawal LPG cylinders. The vapor that collects above the liquid LPG is drawn off by the pressure contained inside the cylinder when the cylinder valve is opened. If the pressure is drawn off faster than the liquid propane can boil to replace it, frost will form on the outside of the metal cylinder below the liquid level. The best way to avoid this is by using a larger tank. Vapor withdrawal cylinders manufactured prior to 1994 have cylinder valves that are identified by an internal left-hand thread female service connection. The cylinder valve contains a safety relief set to release cylinder pressure above 2,585 kilopascals, or 375 psi, and they will operate intermittently to stop the tanks from exploding. When not in use, the valve should be covered with a plastic plug. New design OPD vapor cylinders have a coarse external right-hand connection as well as the internal left-hand female connection called a Type 1 outlet. The new design service connection is designed for recreational use, such as gas barbecue grills, and are found on cylinders 40 pounds or less.
Liquid cylinder has a valve in it with a tube that goes to the bottom to withdraw the liquid out of the cylinder for liquid burning torches and different products like that. It needs to have a brass cap on it when not in use because it is liquid propane.
The advantage of liquid withdrawal systems is that the storage cylinder does not frost up as the liquid is vaporized at the burner when it is drawn up from the cylinder. A moment ago, I said the propane cylinder valves contain a safety relief set to relieve cylinder pressure above 375 psi. Do you think that is true or false? If you are thinking true, you're right. I also suggested that liquid withdrawal LPG cylinder valves have external left-hand thread male service connections. Do you think that is true or false? If you are thinking true, then you are right again. Now it is time to talk about the operation of the cylinder valves. Open cylinder valves using their hand wheels. Do not use tools or excessive force. If the valve appears frozen or jammed, an uncontrolled discharge of LPG could result. Always take a damaged cylinder out of service and replace it with a serviceable unit. Open cylinder valves slowly and fully to provide a flow of LPG from the cylinder. During use, point the relief valve located at the back of the cylinder valve away from sources of ignition, building openings, mechanical equipment, roof access points, and workers. To operate properly, the cylinder must be in an upright position, with the relief valve in contact with the propane vapor. For liquid withdrawal cylinders, an excess flow preventer located inside the cylinder will close and shut off flow of liquid propane if the cylinder valve is opened too quickly. Should this occur, close the cylinder valve and allow sufficient time for the excess flow preventer valve to reset. When operating a cylinder, the worker should be properly protected. Long sleeves and leather gloves will protect you from propane burns should liquid propane be accidentally discharged from the cylinder valve. It is important to consider the filling procedure. Personnel filling cylinders are required by law to have a record of training and should be able to produce an ROT card. Fillable commercial propane cylinders, whether liquid or vapor withdrawal type, are manufactured in many types, including 20 and 100-pound sizes. The tear weight, or TW, of the empty cylinder is found stamped on the protection collar. Regardless of the refillable cylinder size, LPG cylinders are filled to a maximum of 80% of their total capacity. The 20% vapor space above the liquid allows for expansion of the liquid as the surrounding temperature increases. Propane storage cylinders must be filled by a qualified or trained person. Most commercial cylinders are filled by weight on a scale. A standard 20-pound cylinder contains 20 pounds of liquid propane when filled to 80% of its capacity. Brand new and cylinders with service valves left open must be purged to remove unwanted air and moisture contained within the cylinder. Your propane provider can provide this service. New design recreational use LPG cylinders may incorporate an overfill protection device, or an OPD, an internal float that shuts off liquid propane flow and prevents overfilling. When you get to a job site, you must store tanks safely. Empty or filled propane cylinders are dangerous and should be stored out of doors in a well-ventilated area and treated with care at all times. Never expose cylinders to temperatures greater than 52 degrees Celsius. Remember, it is typically much hotter just above the roof surface than at ground level. On site, store in a shaded area whenever possible. Cylinders should be stored outside, at ground level, on a base station, in an upright position, plastic valve plugs in place and firmly secured around their middles to prevent tipping and damage. Thawing of frozen ground could tip cylinders when they are stored directly on the ground. So place cylinders on a level, elevated base placed above the frozen ground. When not in use, all hoses and equipment must be disconnected prior to handling or storage of propane cylinders. Never store propane indoors in a heated or inhabited space. Always close the cylinder valves completely and install cylinder valve plugs to prevent moisture getting into the empty cylinders during storage. When a cylinder valve has been left open, the propane cylinder must be purged to remove air and moisture prior to refilling. Failure to purge cylinders may cause excessive tank pressure and poor operation of equipment, with constant adjustment of torching equipment, and may cause flameouts. Never store other materials on top of or around propane cylinders. No clothing, no roofing materials, and certainly never set your torch on the cylinder. Local codes should be checked relative to the storage of propane cylinders on construction sites, as well as the regulations when storage is near vehicular traffic or buildings. Remember that very small amounts of escaping propane can create a flammable mixture of LPG and air. The CRCA recommends that propane be stored at ground level. Only the cylinders in use should be on the roof. Once the cylinder is empty, it should be lowered to the ground and replacement tank hoisted up. Let's look at the transportation of propane to your job site and onto your roof. Liquefied petroleum gas, or propane, is a dangerous good, and it is regulated by the Federal Clear Language Transportation of Dangerous Goods Regulations, revised August 15, 2002. TDG regulations are enforced provincially for road transportation within its boundaries. Propane is classified as Class 2.1, UN 1075 or UN 1978, and the TDG label shown must be in place on the shoulder of each cylinder and must be visible from the outside of the transporting vehicle. When transporting propane in an open vehicle, cylinders must be secured upright with safety labels visible from the outside. Up to 5 cylinders are permitted as long as the combined weight does not exceed 500 kilograms or 1,100 pounds. If this limit is exceeded, the vehicle must be appropriately placarded, carrying proper documentation, and one person in the vehicle must have transportation of dangerous goods training. Anyone that offers for transport, transports, or handles dangerous goods, including propane, should be trained by their employer. A TDG certificate of training is valid for up to 3 years. If you have questions about TDG regulations or how to interpret them, call the TDG Coordination Center in your province. A few moments ago, I told you how cylinders should be handled. Should propane cylinders always be handled in an upright, vertical position? If you answered yes, then you would be right. Should propane cylinders be stored indoors or in an enclosed space? If you're thinking no, then you would be right. Once you have propane at your job site, then you have to handle it safely and lift it into place. Always handle propane cylinders in an upright position. On the roof, move the larger cylinders using a wheeled cart or a dolly designed to prevent tipping of the cylinders. At all times, the cylinder must be secured to the dolly in an upright position. Dollies prevent damage to the roof membrane. Avoid dragging or pulling cylinders across the membrane. Avoid bumping or rolling cylinders on their side during handling. When lifting 100-pound cylinders by hand, use 2 people, having one lift the cylinder by the foot ring and the other by the protective collar. Warning: breaking a cylinder valve will cause a hazardous condition. And finally, let's look at your hoist. Hoist propane cylinders to and from roof level in an upright position using a properly designed hoisting cage or lifting apparatus attached to the hoist. Never hoist propane cylinders by their cylinder valves, as they are made of brass and can be easily damaged. Do not transport LPG cylinders to and from the roof by ladder, as 3 points of contact must be maintained when climbing the ladder.